Hey, and welcome back to week 3 of Dr. Harte TV. So, last week we talked about what a panic attack is and what you could do to help a woman who's experiencing one. We talked about how they're really tied to silence, how they're really tied to things not being said. And kind of on that trajectory, I wanted to think about today what are the things that we say without actually verbalizing them? Because that's what a traumatic symptom is. It's its own language, and I'm going to help you today try to decode that language a little more. And over the next couple weeks, we're going to look at these different symptoms that we mentioned last week, like hyperarousal and intrusion and constriction, and we're going to kind of break them apart and figure out how to speak their language. So the first thing that we should understand is that traumatic symptoms are 100% normal responses for battle, for violent situations, for survival during those moments. For example, a person who's experiencing constriction has shut down and quit. She has surrendered, and that surrendering might have saved her life in the moment that it happened. The thing we're suggesting to our residents is she doesn't need to surrender anymore. And to do that, we kind of have to help her come to terms with the fact that she has survived one thing and is making a transition into the next, into the salon, into a program of trauma recovery, and that new things are possible for her. But to get to those new things and for us to talk about those new things, I think we should take today to really think about what's at the core of these symptoms, what's actually happening in the mind and in the brain that's causing these things to happen. Because hyperarousal, intrusion, and constriction are all tied to a very damaged fight or flight response. So I'm going to break that down a little bit for you right now, what that fight or flight response system is and why it's malfunctioning for most residents at the salon. So again, traumatic symptoms are 100% appropriate for battle situations. Let's take an example of one of those. Say that you are walking out in the woods and you see a bear. Your fight or flight system is going to tell you to either, make yourself big in front of that bear and scare it, or to get out of there. So that's a really good example of when fight or flight kicks in to save your life, right? It motivates us to take an action during an emergency. That fight or flight system is life-saving. But for people who experience trauma, they live in chronic fight or flight, often for years. Oftentimes, they may not have actually had a reference of what it is to be calm or not had an elevated fight or flight. For residents coming to the salon, it's kind of like that bear in the woods has slept in the bed next to them, has been at their dining table, maybe he's picked the kids up from school, he's around every corner, and she's not sure where to look or where to not look to keep herself safe. So her brain is really, really doing its best to protect her, and it's like, that bear is here, that bear is down the street, that bear is in the driveway, that bear is upstairs. It's constantly keeping her on guard. And while that might have helped her once, what it's doing now when she's in a program of trauma recovery is it's not allowing her to connect back to what's actually happening around her, to the present tense. And all of that vigilance, all of that worry is preventing her from actually feeling or experiencing safety. So she's made it out of the fire, but it's still like she's in flames. So let's break down what fight or flight really looks like when it's used during those moments when it's not needed, during the moments when, our resident sees a bear in the house, but maybe we don't see it in the house. When fight or flight is triggered for a person who's experienced trauma, they will show you signs that this has happened. A lot of us might call it a short fuse when somebody is reacting to things that we might think are small or to things that we're not sure why they're so upset. Fight or flight keeps us very irritable and keeps us very on guard, and a lot of us very vocal when that irritability is triggered. Another thing is that when you're in chronic fight or flight, you will have trouble sleeping. This could come out in a couple of different ways. This could come out in trouble falling to sleep. This could be trouble staying asleep. And oftentimes in the morning, when you get out of bed, it feels like you're exhausted. And that's because your brain is trying to make sense of things during the night. And the last thing that fight or flight comes out in is hyper vigilance. So you might see a woman literally looking over her shoulder. You might see a woman being mistrustful when you think that maybe you've already established some trust. This is completely normal, and that's exactly what we want to do for the resident. We want to normalize that her symptoms were life-saving at one time. We understand them, but they're no longer needed anymore. So when the danger has passed, and we're thinking of entering the salon as a time that the danger has passed, but I just want to offer that for a woman who's maybe come to the salon but has to deal with a restraining order, or has an ex who's still trying to contact her, or maybe runs into somebody with you on the bus on the way to the doctor's appointment, she really might not believe that danger has passed, and this is very normal for that fight or flight to stay engaged in the beginning. When somebody is triggered in fight or flight, it takes them, so say that happens to you, say you run into someone on the bus and our resident feels unsafe, she feels scared, she's showing you irritability, she's showing vigilance, she knew she should have never gotten on that bus. Well, it's going to take her getting to safety, so maybe you're getting off that bus and getting into an Uber together, you and her. It's going to take her a full 4 minutes to come back to a time where she doesn't feel triggered. For some people, it takes longer. What happens is that when you live in chronic fight or flight, like many of our residents will have, your baseline of how you feel every day is raised. So her baseline is already up top. Already she's waiting for danger. Already she's thinking she's not safe. So when she gets a trigger, it's not going from here, this calm level, up. It's going from a raised level higher, and then it takes much longer to come down. So 4 minutes, maybe longer, before she starts to return back to her body, return back to safety. So what can we do, and what can we expect when we work with people who have chronically elevated fight or flight system or shattered flight or fight response? Living this way will have damaging effects to the body over time, to the digestive system, to stress and heart rate. And for many women who do not know that what they're experiencing are symptoms of trauma, they will resort to things like drugs or alcohol to try to numb out what's happening to them because they just don't have the language for it. So increased risk of substance use goes up as well. So what can we do? Well, the first thing to do is to help a woman to feel safe where she is and inside her body, so that no matter where she is, she carries that safety with her. But to uncondition that fight or flight response, it's going to take time, and a lot of it is not something you can talk about. A lot of it is really immersion. A lot of it is going to be her having a couple of nights of sleep in the house or going to an appointment and finding that it was safe. During those times, what you can do to help make that into an immersive therapy experience is by affirming with her the safety of it. So she tells you for the first time, hey, I got a full night's sleep last night. And you say, oh my gosh, you got a full night's sleep last night. How did that feel? Make it a moment, really respond directly to it, help her name it, help her to identify that feeling of safety. Maybe it's that she got through the day without an argument. Maybe it's that she didn't reach for the phone to call somebody from her past who she's been thinking about calling. Any type of moment like that that shows you an indication that she's doing something different, doing something outside of her routine, affirm it and name it with her. And then the brain will have new reference for what that feels like, right? Because the truth is, when our residents come to us, we want to help them so quickly to feel safe. And how could you not? You walk through the door and you're walking into a sanctuary, and you really can feel a change of environment. But that takes time to believe, that takes time to trust, and that takes time for them to know that it's not going to be ripped away from them. So in the meantime, practice that 4-square breathing regularly that we learned last week, and also help find ways for a woman when you see her kind of restless, when you see her shifty, when you see her looking over her shoulder, help her connect to things in the house that she likes, whether it's sitting in the living room with you or putting on some aromatherapy or different moments like that. Create new references in the present for that woman to have, because her mind is trapped in this chronically elevated, chronically fearful place that has not experienced anything different than fear. We need to give a woman new experiences that don't include fear, and over time, that will help lower that elevated fight or flight response. Additionally, in the salon, we are at this amazing point where we are beginning to integrate neurofeedback into our program. And our therapist will do that, and you will get some information about how to use neurofeedback. But what that does is that actually helps a woman look at those elevated fight or flight levels. Literally look, you get pictures of your brain, you get pictures of your heart rate, you get to see your temperature change in different moments of stress. It's really cool, and I'll be telling you more about it soon enough. But that physical information of what your body feels like when it's in chronic stress, mixed with you affirming these safe experiences, helping create new safe experiences, is what in time will take that baseline from here to here. In the meantime, please expect that residents will need longer recovery time in terms of if they are irritable, if they have an outburst, if they have something, it takes longer to come back to center. And my last thing for you is that please remember that when we're trying to fight back against this broken fight or flight response, nothing's too silly. I mean it. Nothing's too silly. Nothing is too small. No victory is too little to praise, right? We're literally reconstructing, helping a woman to reconstruct a new life. I've heard a scholar say that for a woman leaving domestic violence and entering into safety, entering into a safe program, it's sort of like the experience of somebody who's lived in one country all their life and all of a sudden in the middle of the night has to leave it and come somewhere new. And there's new language. They had to leave behind everything they've known. There's new customs. There's a new bed. There's new references. That's what it feels like, this experience of giving up everything you thought you once understood and opening your arms to something new. It's so hard. It's so hard to do that, especially when you have this internal system in your mind that's telling you not to trust the newness. So for you, please let me advocate patience, fun, praise, more patience, and keep trying that breathing. That's one thing that will actually help the body recognize that it's safe. Sometimes our bodies can catch it way before our minds are caught up to speed of how different the world looks, how safe we are. Check out today's worksheet where I'll be asking you some questions and doing some reflections on the fight or flight response. And I'll see you this time next week. Bye.